Did we just learn that Texas Tech is the best team in the Big 12, or is Utah not actually good enough to give the Red Raiders that distinction? This is Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome to Locked On Big 12. I'm Drake Toll from America's #1 Big 12 podcast, Locked On Big 12. That's Chris Level of Locked On Texas Tech, or the cowboy hat for you. You know, Casey Cowan, your second in command, is always cowboy hatted up, so this felt right.
So did the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Week, Jacob Rodriguez, also rocked the same similar hat right after the game at the press conference as well. So
yeah. This one felt right for the folks in West Tech, which is all West Texas, I'm being told this week after the win at Utah. We will start there. Belt to Ute. Is Texas Tech the best team in the Big 12? Then, did Tech buy its roster? That's a big gripe this week. Everybody in the Big 12's ticked off that Texas Tech bought its team and then no one else can compete with them this year because of money. And finally, is Rice-Eccles Stadium truly the best atmosphere in the Big 12? Chris Level was on the sidelines for this game, saw his team false start 8-9 times. Maybe, just maybe, this is the atmosphere. If you hit subscribe, we get to keep our jobs. I mean, belt to Ute. This was 34-10. First three quarters of this game are competitive, and then Texas Tech blows out a team. I think Desmond Howard said on game day Tech would lose because of the altitude. They would fizzle out. Instead, it was Utah that ultimately fizzled out, and I think the altitude difference is 800 feet between Lubbock and Salt Lake City. Simply put, is Texas Tech the best team in the Big 12?
Yeah, I did. Of all the things that people were bringing up before this game, the altitude was the one that made me laugh the most. Just because, it's a minimal difference. And Texas Tech played in Laramie a few years ago, which is the highest altitude in the country, and the altitude it wasn't a thing. Anyway, I'm not ready to say that yet.
Okay. You can. I'll allow it if you want to.
I think this is Arizona State's crown, man. I've felt like this since the summer.
Arizona State?
Arizona State, yes.
Okay.
Because and really nothing we've seen to this point changes my mind at all about that. I don't care that they went to Mississippi State and lost on a Saturday night and then everybody's ready to bail out. They just went into Waco and won a tough road game. Mississippi State's also 4-0. I mean, Texas Tech's not the one with the first round, draft pick at quarterback or receiver. Texas Tech doesn't have any history of winning, much at all of substance. So to me, I think that, we said this before this game last week. How big was this game really? It was big, and I think Texas Tech delivered in a moment where there was a lot of eyeballs on there, on the league and on them, and it's a prove-it moment. But, I mean, it's one of 9, and I think you even said it, Drake. I mean, how good is Utah? I just don't know if we know all the answers to those questions yet. But I think Texas Tech is in a conversation. Vegas may have you as the odds-on favorite to this point, but that's meaningless to me. If you win your next 3, which would include the third one of those is a win in Tempe, Arizona. If you win those 3, I'd probably be prepared to say, yeah, I mean, you may be the front runner, but until you do that, I don't know if I don't think that's the right thing to say, because I just don't believe that. And we're not even talking about like an Iowa State or a TCU or a BYU. It's early here.
So my take with Utah, and I brought this up this weekend, and this is not to tick off their fans, but it's a true point. If you take Kansas, who was 5-7 last year, or Houston, and you give them what Utah has done this year, they wouldn't be ranked. They never would have been ranked. No one is talking about them nationally. We were convinced in the offseason, based on 0 games, by the way, 0 downs of football, that Utah was good. It was an offseason narrative. We don't necessarily know that yet based off of their strength of record so far this year. Doesn't mean they're not going to be good. They could still be 11-1. But I don't think we've seen the best team in the Big 12 via the Utes.
Here's what I would say after watching them up close and kind of being a part of the prep for what Utah is. They are going to have staying power in this league because they're going to be so much better up front on most Saturdays on the offensive line and the defensive line, that assuming they stay healthy, that will allow them to be a part of this thing for a while. I wasn't super impressed with Devon Dampier. Is that mostly Texas Tech? Is that because Dampier was kind of banged up, which he looked to me like there was just, it wasn't as much juice that we were kind of led to believe. And I just didn't, I don't know. And then I think he lacks weapons. I mean, I think Utah, in many ways, it's a credit to these players, but they're playing about 4 to 5 guys both ways. So can that last the rigors of a league race? Because if anybody goes down, that's a heck of somebody to try to replace, because you're now hurting both sides. But I think they're telling you that they're trying to figure out different things on offense because they just lack some weapons, and that's why Dampier may not be all his fault. But that's the part that would concern me. If they get into a game and they ever get behind, or they get into a game where they've got to score, some points and kind of go toe to toe with somebody, I'll be curious to see if they can do it. However, their defense will travel. It's legit. And I think, Drake, why a lot of this got attention is they have legit offensive line, like tackles, and these are draft picks. There were, I talked to a lot of these NFL scouts that were in the box and then on the field before the game. But I think Kyle Whittingham, surprisingly, or to himself, he was like, I cannot believe I'm saying this, but we lost the line of scrimmage today. I never thought in a million years that I thought I'd say that, but that's where they're at. But that's why they've got a lot of good about their program. There's no doubt. And they're going to win some games at home. Their defense and running game is going to travel. But Dampier can't do it by himself. And those running backs they're just good Big 12 players, but they're not – this isn't some – freak running back, or tandem that they've got back there. So anyway, that would be my question. So, and hell, now Texas Tech has won this game, and they don't even have a win over a ranked team because Utah is no longer ranked. So everybody picked Utah to win this game. Yeah. Vegas had them, all the odds makers, and now that's kind of it skews the Big 12 thing, because now Texas Tech has their biggest win, but it's not even over a ranked team anymore. Yet Illinois is still ranked after losing by 53. Notre Dame was 0-2, and they're still ranked. So I don't know. It's weird.
Money talks. And apparently, if we want to dilute this even further, we're going to tell you that Utah's not a very good football team, and that Texas Tech isn't even Texas Tech. They're a bunch of stand-ins who were bought with money. Is that the case? Up next on Locked On Big 12, Locked On Texas Tech. Today's show is brought to you by Square. There's a little bar where I go and grab a cerveza during happy hour most days that I'm in Savannah, Georgia, on Wilmington Island, and it's called Island Daiquiri, and they run on Square. This episode's brought to you by Square. Your favorite neighborhood spots all run on Square. I get a couple of Miller Lights, and then I go to pay, click my little phone thing. You can do the tap to pay. You tap it, and you paid. Neighborhood businesses thrive. The whole neighborhood thrives, and Square is helping them thrive. The kind of place you walk in, everyone knows your name at Island Daiquiri. Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. Go to square.com/go/LockedOnCollege to learn more. Before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square, see you in the neighborhood. Today's show is also brought to you by, that's right, Game Time. Game Time's exactly where I go to get tickets. Tyler Childers, my favorite artist in the world, wearing his hat today. And I saw he's playing a concert in New Jersey in a couple of weeks. Flights are only $100, and the tickets were so cheap that I could just scoop them up right here, right now, and go fly and see my favorite artist for less than $400 total. College football is back too. Comedy shows are going on year-round. You could go see the Ponies run, all thanks to Game Time. Pull it up, couple of taps, amazing deals, even college football games as low as $25 to see your favorite team play. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time and do it today. Visit Game Time and download the Game Time app without delay. Chris Level of Locked On Texas Tech. This is the prevalent theory. And The Athletic has posted this. Everybody wants to talk about Texas Tech and spending their money. The Athletic writes, college football has changed and the Red Raiders are reaping the benefits. Big 12 fan bases seem to complain a lot this week, saying that Texas Tech had bought its roster. Level, did the Red Raiders buy the roster?
Parts of it. So did everybody that has pointed the finger is paying somebody on their team too. I mean, and because it's a non-traditional team that's making some noise, I think it's upset the apple cart. I mean, I go back to the summertime when an anonymous source indicated to The Athletic, it was an anonymous SEC personnel director, saying Texas Tech's really screwing up the market here for us and all those things. I find that comical. And the funny thing about really a lot of this is that Big 12 awards came out this week. You had a quarterback that was named Offensive Player of the Week. You had a defensive player that was named Defensive Player of the Week. You also had a kicker that made a 58-yard field goal, second longest kicker in school history. And those three, along with a whole bunch of others, are developed and part of Texas Tech's roster for the last couple of years. Did they utilize the rules and go try to upgrade the trenches and fill in some holes? 1,000%. Have they done a good job of telling that story or being transparent about it? Yeah. Because I was asked on a Salt Lake radio interview last week, Texas Tech spent $55 million on their football team? Like, how? That's crazy. And because that number's been thrown around a lot. That number is accurate. Okay. However, that number includes your entire athletic department, but it also includes your rev share. So subtract $20.5 million, but this is basketball, this is football, this is softball, this is every other program that you would kind of front-loaded deals to and all that stuff. But they weren't shy about it, and they wanted to try to win. Again, as I told you, they are trying to get to where they've never been before. And so they didn't do anything that anybody else couldn't have done. And then a variety of other folks that maybe aren't playing as well are getting very well paid in the Big 12 and elsewhere. But it's just interesting how that's become a narrative.
Clemson's finally bought an NIL. Doesn't mean it works. I mean, there are schools, Florida State, you think they had no NIL last year?
Yeah.
There are schools across the country paying far more than Texas Tech in the SEC and the Big Ten that are not winning. But I do think Tech, by all intents and purposes, and all that we've heard, is probably in that top 10, top 15 category in college football in spending. My question is, why not? Now that it's above, and I heard this from Jerem Jordan at BYU. He told me during college basketball season, he said, look, when it was illegal to pay players, we did not pay players. You would be fired as a coach if you did. Now that it is legal to pay players, why would we not do that? There's nothing holding you back. It's above board. It's above table. Then let's just go all in and do it. Does it feel like when a Baylor fan or TCU fan or Oklahoma State fan or an Oklahoma State head coach complains about NIL spending at BYU, at Texas Tech, at Colorado, it comes from a place of those schools just not having the same rapport with money as a Texas Tech?
Well, and what's interesting about the Oklahoma State component, I mean, how different was Oklahoma State when T. Boone Pickens was, they had a major advantage and they rode it very well for many, many years with all the facilities and the upgrades and just the different things. And, I know that TCU and Baylor, ironically, it was a year ago, they were outbidding Texas Tech on recruits. I think Texas Tech was kind of behind with freshman recruiting, like high school recruiting. And they, Texas Tech lost a linebacker to Baylor, and they lost an offensive lineman at TCU. And point blank, the either the parent or they're like, man, these schools are offering like 3 times what Texas Tech is, and Texas Tech was trying to save. They just didn't believe in paying like freshmen. They were trying to save their money for the portal, but anyway, things have changed. So it's all what everybody was allowed to do, and some really went all in, some kind of dipped their toe in, and some aren't in it at all, And so, but you have to adapt and thrive in this changing dynamic of I see it on the screen right there. Jalen Brewster, rumored to be headed to Texas Tech, and this would be one of 3 or 4 5-star type guys. This is large in part not really heard of at Texas Tech, but they're doing some different things with their rev share to try to entice high school players, and took a top defensive end out of Georgia, right out of Kirby Smart's backyard, because Kirby Smart, he's got mouths to feed on that roster that are really, really good players, and can't look at bringing a high school player in that hasn't done anything.
Yeah.
And, there's a rub there. And I think Texas Tech's trying to take advantage of it and trying to, squeeze them a little bit. And it's a blessing and a curse if you're Kirby Smart. You have a really good roster. However, if somebody's willing to come in and pay a young player a whole lot more than you can afford, that there's a rub there. And, it doesn't mean that it will work for Texas Tech. It's a bit of a gamble, but this is allowing you to tap into some top end players at certain positions that you're trying to, and the trenches are really where it starts for them.
So in essence, to me, if the gripe is Texas Tech is paying its players, the answer is yes, it's legal, and you can too. That this is completely open, and maybe where I'll veer us into the final conversation about Rice-Eccles Stadium being one of the toughest places to play in the Big 12. Have we given up on the facility? I know Texas Tech is opening new facilities still. I know that Houston just finished theirs, that Baylor finished a practice facility. Are we done with the arms race on campus, and are we completely past good atmosphere stadium, good facilities, and now it's just pay the players?
I think large in part, I bet most schools are going to really call a timeout on any sort of new, unless it's under construction now. I guarantee you any new planning or any new project that it was on the table is being pushed to the back burner, because you've got now at 20 and it will just incrementally go up over the next 10 years. It's going to end up being 30 in 10 years. You've got this bill to pay. That's where I guess most of their resources are going to go, whether it's that, because what you're also going to start seeing because of I think to answer your question, yes, facilities war, large in part, is over. If you've got it, great. If you were building it, great. The timing of what Texas Tech did was ideal. What Houston has done was ideal, that you kind of got it on the front end of this deal. And if you just really needed something, but you're just not going to see massive upgrades here and there unless somebody says, I'll pay for it. I'll donate this money. It's not but trying to, and you're also going to start to see schools, the universities, help the athletics department. This is what West Virginia is now doing. Houston has been doing this for years. Texas Tech is, these actual institutions of the university, most places don't actually fund anything athletically, but that is starting to change, and including at Texas Tech.
Rice-Eccles Stadium. Is it the toughest place to play in the Big 12? Chris Level was on the sideline this weekend. Let's talk about it. Locked on Big 12, Locked on Texas Tech. Today's show is brought to you by Mazda Standard. Mazda is exactly what I drive. There's a reason I switched over about a year ago, and that reason is power. Mazda crafts cars for those that do more than simply move. They deliver confidence with every ride, and with more IIHS top safety pick awards than anyone else. Footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat the details. Mazda brings the same intention to how they craft every model. You can feel Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to available Napa leather and upholstery. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every moment count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved with Mazda. Chris, it's the great dichotomy. The beauty of Texas Tech failing to live up to a crowd that forced them into 8, 9 false start penalties. A Rice-Eccles that was raucous and rowdy to the point that the clap from the quarterback could not be heard, whether it was the starter or the backup. And Tech looked silly in that facility. But then this happened.
Come on, Monster, back! Please, don't leave!
That's a Utah cheerleader begging the crowd, please come back. Please don't leave.
Yeah, it was it was a great atmosphere. It was. I mean, I can't. My perspective, it's about when I'm there and how good the team program is. But I just, when I was continued to be told or barked at about how great Rice Eccles was and all that stuff.
Rice Eccles, we can rename it now, by the way.
Yeah, Rice Eccles. I never disputed that. But my problem is that there's a lot of good ones in this league. I mean, Ames, Iowa.
This isn't number one for you. I was told this was going to be number one this weekend.
Yeah, no. I mean, I wouldn't say that. I think it was up there. It's amongst the top 3 to 5. I mean, in recent memory over the last 5 to 6 years, I would tell you that Ames, Iowa, and BYU were the tops. But I was there at nighttime. Okay. And that may have, so kudos to those folks for being there early in the morning because it was full. I think they sold standing room only seats. And I say standing room only seats, that's an oxymoron. They had standing room only tickets that were available. And then I think they announced a crowd of like 52,000 when capacity is closer to 50. And they were loud. They caused Texas Tech problems. There's no doubt. I almost think that Texas Tech didn't have a good enough plan for how loud it was going to. And I knew that there had been members of the coaching staff that had talked to somebody at Baylor, somebody at various places that had coached there or coached against Utah at games there, just trying to get a feel for all the different things. But they just didn't handle the noise and all that stuff. But then, shortly midway through the fourth quarter, it emptied out drastically, and the kind of the dam broke there.
You said BYU, Iowa State. I've seen night games, Farmageddon, night game at Iowa State. I thought it was one of the mystique of the stadium was what was so special to me. Not the loudest I've heard in the Big 12, but it was the most consistent. I've gotten chills.
You talking about Utah?
I'm talking about Iowa State.
Iowa State, yeah.
Yep. Night game, Farmageddon. Night game, Farmageddon.
Yeah.
Then BYU night game against Baylor, top 15 matchup. This is 2022. That was early in the season when they brought out the Tongan fire dancers and then Cosmo started wielding fire.
Yeah.
That was one of the – because I had seen games across the Big 12 that were just to that point, they didn't have the entertainment value. To me, it was this mixture at BYU of the fans are loud as hell. They are completely sober, which is almost more intimidating than when they're stupid drunk somewhere in the SEC. Like, it's just weird that they're just as loud without a drop of alcohol. And then, you've got some 19-year-old playing for Cincinnati who is looking 17 feet away from him at a mascot that's wielding fire. It just is, I'm looking at a Baylor huddle. They can't focus because there are fire dancers on the field. That is completely different to me than what I got last year at Utah BYU. It was a night game. It was loud. The fans threw trash on the field. That's an atmosphere. There's something to be said about how hostile it is to play at Utah. But for a school that walked into the conference touting their home record, touting how good they are at home, they have less Big 12 wins in their own complex than Texas Tech does now. Tech now has exponentially more than Utah has at Rice Eccles Stadium. This is a slice of humble pie. Chris Level last week said that Texas Tech may come into Utah and thump the Utes. He didn't say they would, but it's a possibility on both sides. This game could have gone in either direction. Level is right. And though you found his address and doxed the name of all of his children, it didn't change the fact that Texas Tech came away with a win in Rice Eccles Stadium. And I think to your point, this is an atmosphere that on any given Saturday is not any better than what you'd get in Stillwater or Manhattan or even Lubbock.
Yeah, and it's good. I mean, I think the mountain part of it, just kind of like at BYU, I think it like is part of the mystique where it keeps the noise in. But for the amount of fans they have, it was. I mean, and there, it's a smart. Like Utah was a smart. That's what also made it what it was. They're smart fans, like nothing at all on offense. As soon as that defense walks onto the field, you just kind of feel this rumble and it starts to get louder and louder and louder. But yeah, it emptied out quick. And we weren't sure what we were going to get, which is the whole point of you and I's conversation a week and a half ago. We just didn't know. And do we still, I mean, are we sold on exactly what everybody is yet? I mean, we've got a ways to go, but I do think Utah, like, here's what I like. They care Like, I don't know if Cincinnati is, I don't know where they're at. I don't like UCF. I don't know where they're at. But like Utah, this was a poked bear, if you will. I think they were passionate. I can see they've got some tradition. They've won they've won some conference titles in recent memory, and I thought it was a good addition to the Big 12. There were some others that I wasn't so sure about, but it's been fascinating, like this back and forth of because I mean, I've got all these people following me on Twitter from BYU that we're so glad about what Texas Tech did. First of all, I had nothing to do with anything. I didn't play it down or anything like that. But that part is good for the Big 12.
Yeah.
Their hatred, their love, their atmosphere, their care factor, all that stuff is great. I had only been part of one of these things. Now I've been part of both, and I'm here for it because I think there's some juice there. So we'll see where it goes from here. But there's a lot of tough places to play in this league. There really is. And passionate fan bases that are going to show up win or lose. And that's why I say that about Ames, Iowa, Drake, because there's been many years where haven't been very good.
Yeah.
Not railing off 9 or 10 win seasons. And they show up, they sing Sweet Caroline, and it's intimidating. They grow that grass up tall there in Ames, and look out. I mean,
we made it over 25 minutes into this thing. You haven't said anything worth clipping for Twitter yet. We'll end it.
Well, what do you want me to say?
We'll end it with this.
Yeah.
You mentioned, I asked you off the air if you had been to both Rice Eccles, now obviously you have, and Lavelle Edwards Stadium.
Yes.
If you're to compare, and I've been open to say that they are both incredible atmospheres, and that I think that Lavelle Edwards Stadium does a much better job with entertainment, and ultimately that gets the fans involved more, and it's a better atmosphere of the two. If you're to compare the two, because those two fan bases love to be compared to one another, where do you sit?
Yeah, they don't. Well, again, maybe it's because of when I was there, but BYU's was better to me. It was louder. I had somebody on the sideline joke, man, like they've had these kids. It was joking, but he's like, they've had these kids cooped up all week. They let them out, man, and just like go nuts. The student section was there 2.5 hours, just blaring Miley Cyrus and singing all kinds of different, whatever the music was. And, Sataki runs out there and he does his little dance. I mean, it was, it was intimidating, and Tech melted down there too. The crowd affected both, like the team I'm covering in both instances. But and again, maybe it's just because of when I was there and it was a night game and all that stuff. But I thought BYU's was a bit better. Yes.
Yeah, it's good, man. I think they're both great. I love that I went to Utah last year. I certainly had more beers before the game when I went and saw Utah play than I ever have going into a game at BYU. But it showcases to me, and people are on different sides of the road here. I know we're going kind of long, but people on both sides of the fence. I never thought DKR was bad. Was never a believer in DKR. I don't think Texas has a great atmosphere.
It's just corporate. It's stale and corporate and busy. Yeah, but it's like the LA Forum years ago when the Lakers were really good. Yeah,
the real fans are in the last 10 rows at the top of the stadium, and it's hard to impact the game from there. They're the ones that got the cheapest tickets at $200. It's like a Cowboys game, and I love the Cowboys, and their games are stale to me. Then there was Oklahoma, and it's one of the most disappointing atmospheres. I saw it at a 2:30 game in a top 25 matchup against Baylor, and wasn't incredibly impressed. I have been thoroughly impressed with the addition of Utah, with the addition of BYU. I saw a 75% full UCF a couple of years ago, and that's just a loud complex. The fact that place shakes the way it does is really good. I'm not going to.
That's the one. That's one of the few that I've never experienced. Been there for basketball, but UCF and Cincinnati are two that I haven't checked off the old box yet.
Yeah, can't wax poetic about Houston. They aren't great yet, but we added some schools in the Big 12 that have good fan bases, that have passionate online fan bases, passionate in-person fan bases in those stadiums. And I think that should be the ultimate takeaway, is that it's good that we can compare UCF or Utah or Ames, Iowa, and Lubbock, Texas, and Lavelle Edwards Stadium, because that gives the Big 12 a boost when opposing fan bases visit these schools. That's Chris Level of Locked On Texas Tech. This has been, and always will be, thanks for making our shows your first listen every single day. Locked On Texas Tech. and Dose Grande.